This video isn't a lesson at all. It's purely a little bit of a placeholder for myself, that I want to come back someday and look at possible rules for the third role. We've just produced 12 videos for Jeremy Guy's 12 rules for the second role, and I wonder if there is benefit in looking at the third role at some stage. As I've said to you before, I make these videos primarily for my own benefit. Educational psychologists say that you remember 10% of what you hear, I think it's 20% of what you read, maybe 35% of what you write, but you remember 85% of what you teach. So these videos are my attempt to help myself remember the rules by teaching them. If they're of benefit to people in Wicklow Backgammon Club or elsewhere, that's great, but I really do this for my own selfish benefits. And I do wonder whether there's a purpose to studying the third role. It might sound daft when you think about it. When you play if you play the opening role, there's only 15 possible roles to play. But moving from the first row to the second row, we straight away get up to 600, at least 630 possible moves or options or roles situations that you face within going from row one to row two. And I've been kind of trying to calculate out, and I reckon it's nearly 20,000 uh, different scenarios you'll face by simply row three. And if you think about it, we needed 12 rows and 12 videos to look at row two, which is only 630. How many rows and rules and videos we need for 20,000? It's just not possible, you would think. And it wouldn't be possible to do every single row. But I just wonder, could you look at it by themes? So in other words, if we're facing the third row, we also roll the first row. So if we rolled first and we went for a move that involved a split at the back and down from the midpoint, a split and down roll, and then our opponent follows up with a split and down, what should we try to do next? Or if our opponent follows up by making a homeboard point, what should we try and do next? If our opponent runs, what should we try and do next? Two down from mid, and so on and so on. And then you kind of go through all the split and down options, and they're only just some of the possible things our opponent could do. And you say, well, what happens if we start by making a home board point, and then our opponent does a split and down roll? What should we do next? Or our opponent makes a matching home board point. What's our priority next? And so on. This slide is just an indicative example of what we might be doing. I wonder if there's something in that, because if you could learn to get to the third roll intact with your, equity and PR intact, the game starts to become a bit more defined. I'm not the only one to think this. On YouTube, there's a guy called James Vogel makes very detailed videos, which I enjoy. If I'm driving, sometimes I'll pop these on, just listen away to them. And if you look at kind of, I searched for James Vogel third roll, and if you look there, he has that where he kind of says, one of those videos there is called Backgammon Third Rolls. You have slotted and your opponent has responded. Now what? The video below it's called Backgammon Third Roll. You have made a point. Your opponent has split to the bar. Now what? And he goes through all the different. He literally goes roll by roll. The videos are probably between half an hour and an hour long, most of them, and there's so much detail that you'd have to watch them multiple times. But I find them really helpful because they get you thinking about what are you trying to do. As the game progresses, if you're in a race situation, it's easy to know what to do. If you're in a holding game situation, it's relatively easy to know what to do, and so on. But sometimes the early roles where it's undefined that can be difficult. And I really like James Vogel's videos about themes for the third row. Not roll by roll what you do, but just themes. And it's just something I'm thinking of doing. However, I'm not going to do a series of rules for the third roll yet, because just for my own game of other priorities. I really need to improve at my use of the cube. Tim Cross, the UK grandmaster and teacher, has this theory that Irish backgammon players, our checker play is quite good, our cube play is poor, and I find in my recent games cube errors and cube blunders are killing my PR. So I want to spend a few months just going through cubing in much more detail. And my hope is that I'm going to make videos about cubing as well. To do that, I want to finish. I set out to kind of look at the opening in backgammon. I've kind of done, it feels like an awful lot on it. But I still have Bill Roberti's 3 books, How to Play the Opening in Backgammon. We've done chapters 1 and chapter 2. I'm going to finish off 3, 4, and 5. And then there's 5 more chapters in the second book and 5 more chapters in the third book. And then, thanks be to God, I'm going to call the opening in backgammon relatively well understood by me and move on to doubling. The other reason I'm not going to do a kind of series of videos on the third roll yet, there are rumours that the Swedish Grandmaster Thomas Tenland is rumoured to be writing a book about how to play the third roll. So if he's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting, well, let's let him do it. But we'll catch up with him later. So, as I said, this is just a placeholder. I think there is room for studying the third roll. I think it could be a huge benefit. As I said, I think if we can get it, that we get beyond the third roll intact, we're now into a situation where we kind of have an idea of what our game plan is going to be, and we can play according to a game plan, and hopefully kind of do quite well out of that. But for now, it's back to how to play the opening in backgammon, and I'll be trying to produce a video on chapter 3 of that book shortly.